Hello and welcome to Decisions in the Making, the video series where I walk you through my decision making in virtual air combat. Today we are going to review a sortie I flew in a Focke-Wulf 190 Dora. We'll focus on general decision making as always, but today's key theme is communication, how it can make or break a mission. We'll also talk about how the Dora performs against Mustangs and the strategy of defending objectives before they are damaged, instead of just hunting down bombers after they drop the payload. This sortie took place on the Combat Box server during an Apollo campaign quite a while ago, in spring already. For those unfamiliar, this is a dynamic campaign where the front line shifts from mission to mission, adding an extra layer of strategies and tactics. We took off from Utrecht with a plan to fly to a friendly objective near Rotterdam. By we, I mean Kurfürst and we are flying as a pair of Doras. The plan was to head to the area, see what is going on, and set up a patrol south of Rotterdam. The front line roughly followed the Rhine River, and Antwerpen was the nearest enemy airfield. So it made sense that the enemy aircraft would come from there. Our objective, or our idea, was to patrol the estuary and intercept attacks before they can reach the objective, giving us more time to respond and prevent damage to our objective. This kind of tactic is also known as Barrier Combat Air Patrol, or BARCAP, where we form a defensive barrier the enemy must break through to reach the target. Now the advantages of BARCAPs are pretty clear. First, you intercept the enemy before they can damage the objective in the first place, and you also very often have the element of surprise, catching them when they are not expecting a fight. Their flight paths are often very predictable, and they carry bombs, so your attacks can be pretty advantageous. They are just easier. The enemy is just easier to engage. But with any tactic there are downsides. You might miss the enemy entirely, especially if you are patrolling with a small force like we are today. You could also get spotted by anti-aircraft fire, which could ruin your surprise. You are pretty easily visible against the sky. And there's always the risk of being outnumbered, and friendly reinforcements are then very far away if you, for example, run into lots of escort fighters. But despite these risks, it's generally worth the effort to sweep ahead, otherwise your air kills won't have an immediate effect on the war effort. You are just hunting down empty aircraft which already have done their job, so nothing you should be really interested in. Once we set up our patrol near the estuary, things didn't go perfectly right away. We missed a pair of mosquitoes flying low towards our objective, and this just happens. You can't catch everything, like I said earlier, and as soon as we got a warning that enemy aircraft are near our objective at Rotterdam, we turned back, dived down, and engaged. Unfortunately, neither of us got the credit for them. We damaged them a little bit, but the damage to our objective was done, and we climbed back up to resume our patrol after the mosquitoes were shot down. Next, as we headed further south, I spotted a bomb-laden P-51 to my right. Kurfürst also saw an enemy, but on the left. We communicated a bit forth and back what each of our opponents was doing, and it became pretty clear that we are engaging two different aircraft. In the beginning we thought we are engaging one single one. And our priority was then to stop them before they reach our objective. So I fired at my P-51 once it was in range, which was extended range I say. We survived a surprising amount of punishment there. But I brought it down eventually before the P-51 could deploy the bombs. After shooting down the P-51s, we returned to the front line, and we didn't have too much fuel left. So we decided to do one last wide push into enemy territory and for one last aggressive sweep. In the distance I could see some movement, which turned out to be two P-51s patrolling. And it was a very odd spot to patrol for P-51s at least, since there was no enemy objective in the area, and they were also not flying towards the front line. But maybe they were eventually heading up, or maybe they were linking up or something like this, or what I thought also, maybe they are escorting something. We weren't interested here at a prolonged fight, so we tried to dive on them, trying to get a shot off, but sadly that didn't came to be, so we raised our noses back up and climbed into the clouds. And the Dora is much better climbing aircraft than the P-51s, so we had no issues here. We pulled back up into the clouds, and the plan was to use our superior climb rate to wait above the clouds and see if they could try to follow. Climbing through clouds without clear visual on the enemy opponent is a sure way to get bounced and to end up in flames. Luckily for them, they didn't do that mistake. But while waiting, I noticed movement below the clouds again, thinking I found the P-51s, which turned out to be an A-20 in reality, still carrying its bombs. And the direction of flight was pretty unusual. He was flying away from the front line to the south. I kinda think that the P-51s we encountered earlier were escorting the A-20, and once the P-51 spotted us, they probably warned the bomber, causing it to turn around, but unfortunately for the A-20 it appeared right where we were looking for the P-51s. I dived down, gave it a good burst, went up in flames, spiraled down, crashed, down it was. And after that engagement, we checked our fuel states, decided it was time to head back, and we climbed back above clouds and we're just flying back to the front line. And on the way, we thought we'd do one last sweep over our objective, one last sweep over the front line, and what we didn't realize was that the P-51s had climbed to our altitude in the meantime, where we were engaging the A-20, and were now tailing us. A few kilometers before reaching the objective and about we were hitting the front line again, we dove down to spot for enemy aircraft. And at that point, the P-51s kinda lost us through the clouds, but they tried to follow and popped out back below the clouds to the left rear. And I could see them right away. And this was sadly the point where things started to unravel for us. So we turned around and headed for them. I was kinda interested, still bouncing them at least once, but now Kurfürst was reporting that he engages a Spitfire, which kinda confused me. Not his fault, but I was right in the P-51 game at this point, and I didn't think much of it. I was confused, but I was kinda not thinking too much about it. Maybe I thought maybe I had misidentified my contacts, or maybe he had, but in reality we were facing 3 enemies, with more joining the fight soon. This led that I was attacking the lead P-51, thinking he was flying alone and was separated, and as soon as I got close and I was about to engage, I noticed tracers flying past me, and at this point I was caught in a very difficult position. So I had to find this very fine balance between forcing the guy in front of me out of the way, and at the same time not maneuvering too much so the second one catches up. The Dora on paper climbs better than the P-51, but the Dora needs to be ideally faster in the first place, or has to have a positional advantage. I don't have neither here. The P-51 behind me is a bit faster. I don't have the position, I'm not very much higher than him. So, and what makes things even more difficult is that he keeps hitting me. He hits my airframe, makes it less aerodynamic, but also he hit my engine, makes it produce less power. So I couldn't outclimb him anymore. Realizing now I couldn't outclimb him, I started to dive towards my own airspace, picking up speed. The Dora is much more agile in high-speed maneuvers, so I started to weave and roll around and to shake off the P-51. He eventually also broke off, but the other one was still on my tail. And I believed I was now over friendly forces at this point, so I made the decision to eject. My aircraft was damaged, it felt damaged. I also ejected because I had a couple of experiences before this mission where I held on to my aircraft a bit too long and got pilot killed then. Kurfürst was already down, and I had no chance of outclimbing or running the P-51s, so ejecting here was probably the best option. Notice also how I ejected. I bunted the nose in a negative G maneuver. This ejects you very quickly from the aircraft. If you are under fire and you are afraid that the pilot gets pilot sniped while climbing out of his cockpit, it's just better to really eject him from the aircraft by pulling lots of negative Gs. Kurfürst, like I mentioned, was already down. After he engaged the Spitfire, he got ganged up by the Spitfire and also another P-51. So this went down super quickly. And in the end, a single miscommunication that we were not clear about how many enemies we are engaging cost us both our planes, and in case of Kurfürst he also got his pilot killed. And we weren't able to return to base with the success we hoped for. We still shot down quite a bit of aircraft here, and it was a very nice mission. It was also fun to fly, but it's always nice to bring the birds home, isn't it? So the sortie was valuable, and the lesson here is to listen very carefully what your wingman is saying and to be aware when your observation doesn't match theirs. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have questions about the sortie, about anything that had happened here, just put it in the comments. Let me know how you liked the video. See you in the next one.